Spy versus Spy is my favorite comic. Spy versus Spy is a wordless, often violent comic strip you can find monthly in Mad Magazine. Originally created by Cuban cartoonist Antonio Prohias, Spy vs. Spy features two pointy-faced, gruesome, constantly at odds, some sort of being spies, and they're always blowing each other up and stuff. And one is dressed with entirely in black, the other one's dressed entirely in white. But other than the colors of their hats and cloaks, they are virtually identical. I came across Spy vs. Spy in 5th grade when my mom gave me a 1-year subscription to Mad Magazine. And I spent the next year learning the things that you would from Mad, so some bodily anatomy. That's about it. Maybe some bad TV shows I should have watched at one point in time. But the point is at the end of that year, we came across, we got a subscription, or my magazine came through and it said, this is the last one of your subscription. But if you get another year, you get a second free subscription that you can gift to an individual of your choice. So my mom explained this to me, and she said, who would you like to gift this to? And without hesitation, I was like, Scott. Now, Scott was my new best friend at this point in time. Now I'm in 6th grade, it's 2001, and we had met a few months prior, but we were fast friends. When I met, it felt like I met my match, or almost like a nemesis. And and we got in trouble for the next rest of our lives. And that's the end of my story. No, I'm still here. No, Scott and I were fast friends. We were worlds apart in so many ways. Like his dad would drop him off at school in a truck that had a Confederate flag on it. My dad was black, so he didn't have a Confederate flag. Scott had this, 2001 bleached hair at the time, Slim Shady. I just had a mop that I always threw a hat on. But apart from our looks and the amount of melanin that might be in our skin, we were virtually identical. It took no time at all for Scott and I to become known as rabble-rousers throughout our Miller Middle School. There was one particular incident. We went to go see Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in theaters with a class field trip. And on the way back was when we decided it was the best time and place to set off a stink bomb. We set off a couple in the church parking lot across the street from my house, but we thought the contained area of a school bus would be much more effective. Pulling into Miller Middle School, and as the diesel roar of that rainbird yellow school bus turned to idle, the once common smell of Orion scented Axe body spray was quickly overpowered by the putrid scent of rotten eggs. This wouldn't be the only time Scott and I would get detention together. There was the BB principal incident. There was the trombone mouthpiece malfeasance. There was the dog dollar debacle. List goes on. We continued these antics from middle school into high school, and my antics in my own personal life and getting into drugs and the things that 15, 16-year-olds do landed me a one-way ticket to a trade school for delinquents like myself outside of Grand Junction. It was a very strict school. We had to wake up at 5:30 every day, bed made, military corners. We were learning a trade while we were doing that, so I did welding. And Scott got to stay back here in Durango with a friend group that I was never really able to rejoin as an adult. And during that period of time, him and I kept in touch. I lost a lot of friends during this section of my life, but Scott called me. We had payphones in my dorm, and he would call me pretty often. And we were worlds apart, and other than our geographical locations and our sex lives, Scott and I were virtually identical. By the time I moved back to Durango, my transition was easy. I'd been away for about 4.5 years, but we roommated together and we continued the antics that we were known to continue at this point for like 12, 13 years. And there was one time, we'd still like to get outside and go camping other than living in a place that we called the crack den. And one particular incident, we went out to Vallecito for an overnight fishing, camping trip sort of thing, and after a day of not catching anything other than a buzz, we wandered away from our campsite. Sun had already fallen, it's like 10 o'clock at night, but we saw a wedding. And we're like, we're gonna go dance at that wedding. They're never gonna have any idea. So we go through this field, and then the wedding is about, 10, 20 yards away from us. What we don't see is this ravine in between the dance floor and ourselves. So, of course, we tumble into said muddy ravine, and we find ourselves in a pile of BACs and swim trunks in the bottom of this muddy pit thing. But we're determined because we watched The Wedding Crashers once. And we're going back up the other side of this thing. This is like 2015, July. So as soon as LMFAO's Party Rock Anthem came to a close, Icona Pop's I Don't Care started playing, and we're crawling up out of this pit, and we lost a flip-flop, and you can hear that, I caught you on a summer day when you were gone. And we're crawling up, I lose another flip-flop. I crashed my car into a ditch, don't let it burn. I don't know how it goes. But as soon as that beat dropped, we're on the dance floor. I don't care, I love it. And we are soaking wet, muddy, and we start dancing, and nobody noticed us the whole night. That's not true. They caught us immediately. I don't know if it was the sticks in Scott's hair or the twigs in mine, or was it the family circus style dash of swamp water leading to our feet. We both got punched by a bridesmaid that night and wound up in the bottom of that ditch again. And the next morning, Scott had a black eye and I was missing my social security card and $600. But other than our bank account balances and facial scarring, we were virtually identical. Years later at Scott's own wedding, we had both been sober for a number of years between the two of us. Me about 4 years at that point in time, him for about 3. We both needed it. And this wedding was this beautiful, amazing thing. I served as best man / officiant. And this weird thing happened where I was with my girlfriend there, but I was introducing people to Scott's new wife, who they'd been dating for a number of years. And I kept referring to her as my sister-in-law. And I couldn't figure out where it was coming from, but through all these years of Scott and I growing up and holding each other accountable, and we had found a bond that was brotherhood, and I didn't even realize it had happened. I didn't have to name it. It was just there. This is my new sister-in-law. And if you backtrack a bit, in 2016, Scott and I had watched we watched the Broncos win the Super Bowl for the last time ever. And we decided, we were still drinking in 2016, but we're like, we're gonna get matching Broncos tattoos someday. So we cashed in on that years later, in 2021, after we had both found sobriety. But we're sober, so we're not gonna get Denver Broncos tattoos. Applause. But, we thought back to all those years ago when we were reading Mad Magazine. Now, he was always going for white spy, and I was always going for black spy. And my girlfriend and I drive up to Denver to, they own a house at this point in time. And we decided to get tattoos, Marion Street tattoos. And we love staying with Scott and his wife, Olivia, because their house always smells like eucalyptus and coffee. But we left the girls at home and we went out at night and got tattoos at the shop. And when we walked in, it's this very vivid memory. I don't know, but I get high when I walk into a tattoo shop, the smell of A&D ointment and blood and the buzz of the needles. But I was looking at my best friend, or brother at this point, and I was like, this guy is getting a matching tattoo with me, of all people, and he's such a generous, kind, warm, loving, incredible human being, and out of all people in the world, he's choosing me to get a matching tattoo. And I thought that was just the most wonderful thing. And then I remembered that he's all these things, but other than the fact that he sat down and got a tattoo of White Spy, and I sat down and got a tattoo of Black Spy, we're virtually identical. And I gotta remind you of one thing. It's hard to look within and figure out like who you truly are as a person. You can't get rid of the ego when you're trying to figure out who you are as an individual. So a good way to sum that up is look at your friends, look at the people that are in your circle and that are attracted to you in your soul. And man, if you got people like Scott, you're doing pretty good. Thank you, that's my time.